Have you ever felt it? That powerful magnetic pull toward a certain action, a specific behavior that feels less like a choice and more like a destiny unfolding? It's a moment when the chaos of the world seems to quiet, and this one path, this one escape route, appears as the only sane option. It feels inevitable, doesn't it? As if some unseen force is guiding your hand, whispering that this is the only way to find a moment's peace, the only way to silence the deafening noise both outside and within. You are not alone in this feeling. This experience is a profound signal from your soul, a deep cry for understanding that so many of us have felt but few have dared to explore. If this message resonates with the core of your being, know that you have found a safe space here. Let us journey into this mystery together. Acknowledge your own journey by liking this video, subscribe to walk this path with us, and share your truth in the comments below. Let the universe hear our collective voice. You might simply type, "I am not alone," or 777 to signal your alignment with this awakening. These powerful urges, these seemingly unavoidable behaviors, often begin with the quietest of whispers. They don't announce themselves with thunder and lightning. They emerge subtly, like a shadow at dusk. They present themselves as a gentle solution, an attempt to flee from a persistent, gnawing feeling of discomfort that haunts our quietest moments. It is a feeling of deep emptiness, a void where vibrant life and purpose should be. At first, the choice to follow this urge feels like a victory, a temporary reprieve, a fleeting moment of relief that you desperately crave. But over time, something shifts. The divine frequency of your soul begins to warp. These choices, once consciously made, begin to weave themselves into the very fabric of your being. They transform from simple actions into deeply ingrained habits, an energetic pattern that runs on autopilot. What once seemed like a temporary solution, a small boat to weather a passing storm, reveals itself to be a vicious cycle, a whirlpool that pulls you deeper into the very chaos you sought to escape. The initial search for fleeting relief, for just a brief, unspeakable sense of peace, gradually and insidiously turns into a destructive routine, a ritual that drains your life force and dims your inner light. But what is truly at the heart of this cycle? What is the source energy behind this powerful, almost gravitational pull? What truly drives a soul to persistently seek something they know on a conscious level is causing them harm? We must look beyond the surface, beyond the simple explanation of seeking pleasure. The truth, the profound and often hidden truth, is that these behaviors are almost always an expression of a much deeper wound. They are a cry from the soul, an attempt to fill an inner void that seems impossibly vast, a chasm that no amount of external distraction can ever truly bridge. The person caught in this pattern is not acting solely for the immediate rush of pleasure or the momentary numbing of relief. Deeper than that, they are acting out of a desperate, primal need to reconnect with something vital that has been lost, something that is profoundly missing from their inner world. On the surface, it may appear as self-destruction, a foolish and illogical dance with pain. But you must understand what is truly at stake. Beneath the surface, there is a hidden, desperate search for meaning. It is a sacred, albeit misguided, attempt to heal an invisible pain, a deep-seated suffering that so often escapes our conscious awareness. A wound inflicted long ago that has been left to fester in the shadows of the psyche. Have you ever looked around and wondered why some people seem to sink into the depths of these powerful addictions, seemingly with no way back, while others, who face the same temptations, mysteriously escape their grasp? It is one of the greatest paradoxes of the human experience. Addiction, in its essence, is one of the most complex and challenging problems of the human psyche, a spiritual malady that goes far beyond mere physical dependency. In our modern society, its face is everywhere, a shape-shifting phantom that appears in countless forms. We see it in the obvious forms of substance abuse, the bottle or the pill that promises a fleeting escape. But we must also recognize its more subtle disguises, the compulsive behaviors that often hide a deep, gnawing existential void. What is the true nature of this almost uncontrollable need to escape reality? Is it truly, as so many believe, a simple lack of willpower, a moral failing? Or is there something far deeper at play, a hidden current that most of us fail to perceive? To understand this, we must turn to the wisdom of those who have dared to map the human soul, figures like the great psychologist Carl Jung and the compassionate physician and author Gabor Maté. Their work provides a clearer view, a spiritual lens through which we can see how these addictions manifest and, more importantly, why they sometimes become such powerful, imprisoning cycles that are so agonizingly difficult to break. Through their guidance, we will see that these addictive behaviors are not merely responses to external factors or simple choices made in a vacuum. They are in fact profound reflections of unresolved internal conflicts, echoes of ancient battles still being waged within the soul. Carl Jung, a true pioneer of the inner world, believed that addictions are not simply character flaws or moral weaknesses, as our judgmental society so often proclaims. Instead, he saw them as powerful expressions of a human psyche that is profoundly out of balance, a soul whose divine harmony has been disrupted. According to Jung, addictions are essentially distorted forms of escape, desperate attempts to cope with immense psychological suffering or a deep, hollowing existential void. When a person cannot consciously face their own inner demons, their own shadow aspects, they seek relief in these external, addictive behaviors. These behaviors, whether it's the numbing embrace of alcohol or the endless scroll of a social media feed, are unconscious attempts to fill that inner void that can emerge from a profound lack of meaning, a painful emotional disconnection from others and from oneself, or aspects of the personality that have been suppressed and have never been integrated into the whole. Jung viewed the psyche as a magnificent, complex whole, a sacred network of conscious and unconscious aspects. When someone falls into the grip of addiction, it is often an unconscious, desperate attempt to fill an inner emptiness, a spiritual hunger. This void, this sacred emptiness, can emerge from many forms of soul wounding, a pervasive lack of meaning in life, a deep emotional disconnection from our authentic selves and from others, or vital aspects of our personality that have been denied, rejected, or never allowed to be recognized or accepted. Jung also saw with profound clarity that addictions are a powerful, albeit dysfunctional way to escape from the harshness of reality, especially in times of overwhelming stress, deep anguish, or existential crisis. In these moments of soul-crushing pressure, an individual may seek refuge in substances or compulsive behaviors as a way of escaping the unbearable weight of life. However, this escape is never permanent. It is a fleeting illusion, a temporary truce in a war that continues to rage within. And the return to reality, after the temporary high has faded, is often harder and more painful than before, creating a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle, where the addiction doesn't solve the problem, but only worsens it, digging the void even deeper. In his groundbreaking book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, Dr. Gabor Maté explains with profound compassion that what we often chase are false needs. He explains that these false needs, no matter how many times they are temporarily satisfied by the addiction, can never truly leave us feeling whole or fulfilled. The brain, so to speak, never truly feels like it has had enough to be able to relax and focus on other essential matters of life. It's a cruel paradox. as if after eating a full meal we still feel desperately hungry and are compelled to immediately seek more food. Dr. Maté defines addiction as any repetitive behavior, whether it is related to substances or not, in which a person feels a compulsive need to persist, despite the clear and devastating negative impact it has on their life and the lives of those they love. He offers a simple, powerful question to help us identify the presence of addiction. If you have doubts, ask yourself a simple question. Given the damage you're causing to yourself and others, would you be willing to stop? If the honest answer is no, then you are in the grip of an addiction. And if you find that you cannot stop the behavior or fulfill your own promise to stop, then you have fallen into the powerful current of addiction. It's crucial to understand that it's common to fall into substance addictions, but behavioral addictions are also incredibly frequent and can be equally, if not more, destructive to the soul. The compulsive use of social media, pornography, video games, gambling, sex, shopping, and even seemingly healthy activities like exercise or work can become powerful addictions when they are used to escape from inner pain. As Maté explains, any passion can transform into a destructive addiction when the individual loses control, when the behavior begins to master the person instead of the other way around. The central question is always, who is in control? The individual, the sovereign soul, or the behavior, the compulsive pattern? It is possible, and even beautiful, to master a passion, to use it as a vehicle for growth and joy. But an obsessive passion that a person cannot control, that begins to dictate their life and choices, is a clear sign of an addiction, a signal that a deeper spiritual issue is crying out for attention. The long-standing debate about the causes of addiction often misses the most crucial point. While some try to explain addiction as an inherent problem within people, a flaw in their character or biology, a more accurate and compassionate explanation is that addiction arises from the complex interaction between the individual, the subject, and their environment, their history, and the objects or behaviors of their addiction. Dr. Maté concludes that the root of all addiction, whether it is severe or mild, is a desperate attempt to relieve suffering and emotional pain. Beyond the simple search for pleasure, the chronic use of substances or engagement in compulsive behaviors is a desperate, often unconscious, attempt by the addict to escape their own unbearable inner pain. But tragically, this very attempt to escape only serves to deepen the void, leaving us feeling even emptier and more disconnected than before. Given the staggering number of people who grow up in abusive or emotionally absent homes, along with the often corrupt and soul-crushing state of modern society, it is not surprising that so many turn to drugs and behavioral addictions as a way to cope with life. This move isn't entirely irrational or ineffective, because in the short term, addictions work. They are very effective, at least temporarily, at relieving suffering and emotional pain. Dr. Maté shares the profoundly simple and heartbreaking story of a drug addict who, when asked why they use drugs, explained their reason with devastating clarity. To not feel the feelings I feel when I don't use drugs. Addictions are not only effective in providing relief from emotional suffering and pain, but they can also temporarily elevate someone from the crushing monotony or misery of daily life, leading them to fleeting experiences filled with emotion, meaning, and joy. The great psychologist William James, writing in the early 20th century, discussed the powerful effects of alcohol, emphasizing that it not only relieves tension, but can also induce a state similar to a spiritual experience, at least until the inevitable alcohol poisoning begins to ravage the mind and body. As James wrote in The Varieties of Religious Experience, the dominion of alcohol over humanity is undoubtedly due to the profound mystery and tragedy of life. that those glimpses and flashes of something we recognize as excellent are granted to so few of us, only in the initial fleeting phases of what is in its totality a poisoning so degrading. Although addictions can seem to work in the short term by relying on dangerous shortcuts for emotional relief and happiness, over time, a terrible price is paid. The longer we persist in an addiction, the more our tolerance grows, and the more we come to depend on the substance or activity to feel any positive emotion at all. Slowly but surely, the addiction becomes the central gravitational point of our lives, while everything else that could provide lasting, authentic satisfaction, our health, our relationships, our creativity, our career, and our sacred sense of purpose fades to the periphery. Moreover, addiction physically alters the very structure of the brain in ways that undermine our voluntary control. When we're trapped under the control of an addiction, we often find ourselves in what's called brain lock, a state which causes our actions to follow our addictive impulses, while a rational part of our mind watches helplessly, unable to do anything, knowing full well that we are destroying our mind, our body, and our divine potential. Given the powerful stronghold of addiction, the vital question arises: what is the possibility of ever overcoming it? The problem in facing any attempt to live a renewed and addiction-free life is that the very same mechanism that needs to heal the brain is the one that is damaged by addiction. As Gabor Maté warns, the more intense the addiction, the greater the brain abnormality, and the greater the biological obstacles to achieving health. Fortunately, our brains are remarkably resilient. Even in old age, it's possible for the brain to restructure in ways that allow us to live, perhaps for the first time, a full, healthy, and addiction-free life. This leads us to an interesting and powerful concept called nodal consciousness. This form of heightened awareness can interrupt the cycle of addiction because instead of blindly succumbing to the polarities of pleasure and pain, longing, and satisfaction, it allows the person to experience the full spectrum of human experience with a deep and profound equanimity. The first step in overcoming any vice is to courageously acknowledge its existence and the devastating impact it has on the person's life. This may seem simple, but many people find themselves trapped in the vicious cycle of denial for years, without ever deeply questioning the reasons that lead them to seek relief in harmful behaviors. When vice is finally recognized for what it is, a temporary, dysfunctional solution to a greater, deeper pain, the healing process can finally begin. From that point of sacred recognition, the individual must reflect on the aspects of their life that led them to the vice in the first place. This reflection is absolutely essential, as without it, the person cannot understand the deeper causes of their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Jung described the human psyche as being full of layers, of complexes and symbols that remain hidden until the individual is willing and courageous enough to look inward. Vice, according to Jung, is a symbolic manifestation of what's hidden in the psyche, an unconscious attempt to deal with suffering and internal shadows. When a person begins to reflect on their vice, they are actually starting the sacred journey toward what Jung called individuation. Individuation, a central concept in Jungian psychology, is the profound process of integrating all aspects of the psyche, both the light and the shadow, the positive and the negative, into a coherent and functional whole. This means courageously looking at the shadow and the repressed aspects of ourselves without judgment, but with a compassionate willingness to understand what these aspects have to teach us. This process of deep self-awareness and reflection can be intensely painful, but it is also the ultimate key to liberation. In the case of vice, reflection helps to identify the thought patterns and emotional triggers that sustain the addictive behavior. For example, an alcoholic may come to realize that their drinking became a way to cope with profound loneliness or a crippling lack of purpose. In this case, The vice is not just about the substance itself, but about what it represents, a defense mechanism against emotional suffering. When the person can reflect on this, they can begin to look for healthier, more constructive ways to deal with their emotions and their loneliness, replacing the destructive vice with behaviors that truly nourish the soul. The most common mistake when dealing with addiction is thinking that it's simply a matter of a lack of willpower. In reality, addiction is the opposite is a reflection that the problem goes far beyond a simple weakness of personal resolve. While individual responsibility is important, it's essential to recognize that the process of overcoming vice, though ultimately an inner journey, greatly benefits from social support and community reintegration. It is essential to recognize that people are not alone in their struggles. Connection with others and genuine social support play a crucial role in the healing process. This is not just about an internal struggle, it's also about how the individual relates to their environment and to others. A supportive community can offer the necessary support to restore balance, reminding the person that although they suffer, there is always hope and there are always opportunities for healing. The key lies in cultivating genuine and compassionate self-awareness. Addiction, although it may seem like a temporary solution to suffering, doesn't address the underlying causes. Recognizing that addiction is an attempt to cope with emotional pain or internal emptiness is the first and most critical step toward healing. As a person develops greater self-awareness, they can begin to break the destructive cycle, understand their deeper needs, and most importantly, heal the pain that lies behind the addiction. Instead of judging themselves, the person must learn to be patient and compassionate with themselves. Healing takes time, and although the path is difficult, each step toward awareness and self-acceptance is a step toward liberation. By integrating what has been repressed or unresolved in the psyche, the person begins to find a deeper sense of meaning and a profound inner peace. The process of overcoming addiction is not just about quitting a substance or a behavior. It is about rebuilding a life based on a deeper understanding of oneself, accepting one's own shadows, and developing greater emotional resilience. True healing lies in embracing the entirety of oneself, both the positive and the negative, in order to live a more authentic and fully realized life.